please join me in welcoming Mike.
Many of you know that I've had a long career spanning the research and commercial sectors with a mission to find new forms of collaboration to make research translation more effective. This has involved establishing industry associations, academic networks, commercial companies, including massive global digital platforms, and of course, cooperative research centres. But however, few of you know that I've had a lifelong involvement in judo. Actually, since year 8 at the YMCA in Hobart. I lived in a sort of a bad neighbourhood, and my mum wanted me to be able to take care of myself as an 8-year-old. Apart from the physical and mental sort of benefits from training and competing in judo, judo teaches two key principles. The first is mutual welfare and respect. Despite the combative nature of judo, we are taught to help each other learn, symbolised by the respectful bow. Even after you have you've been overpowered by an opponent, the bow symbolises you saying thank you, and that I have learnt and that I will improve in the future as a consequence of you beating me up. This concept of mutual welfare and trust and respect is totally embedded in the sport. So when I was a younger athlete representing Australia and travelling around the world, I was always really welcomed in the clubs. No matter what language was spoken, everybody was always welcome on the mat to train. And sometimes you'd turn up to a club and they'd have an Olympic champion on the mat with you. Very intimidating. But whether you were a novice or an expert, you were welcome to train with one another and learn. So collaboration, trust and mutual respect is built into the sport, as it should be in our food innovation system. Australia has a highly capable research system. We have world-class producers and we have innovative data and technology. How can we mobilise these diverse capabilities to meet the challenges facing us in the coming decade based on this mutual respect and welfare? The second principle in judo is around maximum efficiency with minimum effort. So this is best expressed as using sometimes larger and more powerful opponents' momentum or reaction to throw them into the ground. A common technique, for example, is to push an opponent and get their reaction and then turn your hip and flip them over onto the ground. Maximum efficiency, minimum effort. Sound familiar? More with less action-reaction. Just like in judo, just like in a judo throw, we need to flip research so that we don't expend all our efforts on developing research solutions without properly understanding the problem we are trying to solve. And so with the data, how do we spend more time finding ways to use the data to support decisions and less time wrangling it? So today I want to outline two things that stand out to me as having the biggest impact on whether this country becomes a world leader in agri-food innovation. First, we need to flip the research. Many people here will have heard of the movement in universities to flip the classroom. I believe it is time to flip the research if we are to tackle our biggest challenges in this industry. We also need to unlock the data. We need to figure out how to switch the emphasis on collecting more and more data and focus on how we unlock the value in that data. So I, like pretty much everyone here, is in this game to address one of the most challenging issues facing the world today. How do we produce enough food to feed the world without breaking it? And then, how do we maintain consumer trust that food is safe to eat? And then, how do we optimise nutrition and reduce waste? And then, how do we do this in a way that doesn't deplete natural resources and regenerates the environment. And then how do we meet these challenges and create economic opportunities for Australians? Because I don't just want Australia to export its incredible produce. I want us to export value-added services and smart technologies that have been designed and developed here alongside our world-class food producers. This, of course, is not a simple challenge, but nor was closing the hole in the ozone layer. One thing I know with certainty, as I walk through the smoky haze over the summer and the flooding rains this week that Tim spoke about, now is the time to get moving, urgently. Never before have we seen this confluence of climatic events, social pressure, uncertain trading conditions, and political uncertainty. The question is, how can we rise to the challenge and act fast enough to be leaders, or will Australia be a follower? Acting fast enough to be leaders as opposed to followers. That's our challenge. I believe we have all the ingredients in place. Australians are known as rapid adopters, and the appetite for good agtech is growing. We are now seeing a wave of growth in the number of agtech startups, with interest from venture funds and new incubators and accelerators and so forth. Many of these startups that we're seeing are progressing to scale-ups, with reports of quite significant follow-on funding over the past year for some of those startups. So farmers can see where the future lies in this new technology, if only we can bridge the distrust caused by too many experiences of tech that requires them to input the data over and over again, that one system can't talk to another, or that it just doesn't do what it says on the can. This is the challenge. So now I want to talk about what we can do about it. So we need to make more adjustments to how the innovation ecosystem works. We have to tweak our recipe to extract maximum value for our producers and consumers and our communities. We just need to work with the maximum efficiency and minimum effort. Finding solutions has become overweighted compared to finding the problem. We spend too much time finding the solution without thinking about what the problem is. If we want to have an impact, let's spend more time validating the problem and then designing for maximum impact in the areas that matter. So we have the talent. We have more people and organisations than ever before focused on digital agri-food innovation. Australia ranks highly in terms of research output. We know how to do great research, that's for sure. We are particularly good at agricultural research, and we estimate that there are about 15,000, big number, researchers working in this field alone. As someone who has represented Australia in sport, I'm proud to say that we have kicked it out of the park in terms of research and capability. But we are terrible when it comes to research impact. Among the OECD, this has been touted quite a few times, we rank 9th in research output. In research impact, we rank 29th. So the country that is the best and the fastest at putting together innovation capability, the data, and the technology will reap the rewards. This is how I think Australia can do it. We need to flip the innovation system. Every Australian university, we say, will say that it's great at collaborating with industry. Just about every researcher in our field will say they are industry-led. I'm telling you that statement is not true. Neither of those statements are true. Yes, we are getting better. Yes, there are some great examples of research industry collaboration, but it's far from the norm. There is still a yawning gap between the researchers and the people whose problem they are trying to solve. Research is still directed by academics whose key performance indicator is the number of papers they publish and not how many people benefit from their findings. That's not to say academics aren't motivated by doing public good. The vast majority I've encountered want to make a difference. But the system doesn't reward them for that. The system rewards them for publishing papers. There is still resistance among some researchers to engage directly and regularly with the people who use the output of their work. And so by the time the research outcomes get released, the industry has often moved on. Our experience as a CRC has been that many view us as a funding body, that we are here to serve universities by funding their work. I absolutely refuse to let Food Agility CRC be a funding body. We have purposely taken a different path. It's not the easiest path, but that's for sure. But the easiest thing for us would be to call for project submissions, choose the ones we'll fund, and then just check in on the projects every now and then. Food Agility does not fund projects. We invest in research that will help industry partners solve their greatest challenges. This means the starting point must be identifying what those challenges are. Then we can look across our incredible network of universities and technology partners to curate the best team to solve those challenges. I want our researchers to publish great papers, but that's secondary. The primary focus has to be impact for the people in the agri-food. Did we help solve their problem? Did we make their job easier? Did they increase outputs while reducing inputs? Did they enhance food production and the natural environment? Did they reduce waste or water use or greenhouse gas emissions? Did we as consumers get safer, healthier food? That's why Food Agility has taken a very different approach to curating projects and teams rather than funding research proposals. And we can have academic independence and industry-led research. We can have high-quality research based on sound scientific methods that also involve early prototype testing. We just need to flip the research. So a lot of people in this room will have heard of the term flipping the classroom. So this is the movement among universities to invert the traditional model of learning. It used to be that the students came to the classroom to consume the content and then applied the learning the learnings from that content happened outside. The new model is to give the students the content to consume in their own time, and they use the classroom time to apply that knowledge appropriately. Flipping the classroom has transformed university teaching and learning. Flipping the research could transform the Australian research and innovation sector. Here's what we mean by flipping the research. We start by curating the challenges from industry. We identify the capabilities and curate cross-disciplinary teams. We bring together the industry representatives with the researchers and other capabilities we need to define the project. We work together to map out the project or program or research that includes short-term milestones for delivery to enable the validation as well as a long-term object for impact. And then we constantly check in with end users to make sure we're learning and developing it is useful and usable. We don't wait until the end of a 3-year waterfall project and the papers are published before we release outcomes. We release early prototypes and we continuously refine our approach based on feedback and other data. And we make sure that built into the research program is a plan to either communicate the findings or commercialise the IP so it can be used by people who need it. This approach requires significant cultural change across the Australian research system. It will require universities to offer greater incentives to researchers who deliver impact, as well as faster legal and governance systems that can support agile research projects. Food agility will be a consistent agitator for this until we witness a rising tide of change that makes true industry collaboration the norm, and not just a few individual case studies. I want to be clear that I'm not suggesting all research should follow this approach. There will always be the case for pure research and academic-directed research. I also want to be clear that academic independence is paramount. The flipped approach is about creating impact where it is needed most to support innovative, prosperous and healthy communities. It's about making research more relevant to the challenges we face as producers, as consumers, and as a society. Validation of research outcomes by other scientists is critical to traditional knowledge creation. But iterative validation of research and technology outcomes with problem owners and beneficiaries is critical to practice change and adoption and ultimately impact. Our challenge is that the balance at the moment favours the former and not the latter. To be clear, industry impact is not just a nice to have. It is mission critical given the scale of challenge and opportunities ahead. And this takes me to the second key ingredient for Australia to unlock agri-tech innovation at scale. The scenario I've painted leads us to data everywhere, but does it make us think? Or perhaps even more importantly, do? Courtesy of the fourth industrial revolution, we now have some flashy new tools. These of course include the internet and the exponential growth in the things that connect to that internet. And those things that also measure stuff, more and more things in the environment, often in real time. We've all heard of these things, from microclimate sensing to robots and drones to farm machinery to logistical track and trace systems and to satellites. This room doesn't need to be reminded of the explosive growth in these measurement systems spawned by these technologies. And we keep talking about how big data and artificial intelligence is not just coming, but it has already arrived in agriculture. We've gone past that point about what we're looking forward. We're now seeing great examples of this in the system. So I just want to pause there for a moment, just reflect on something that happened in the food agility team after we returned, like most of you, coming back from a break over the Christmas break, and reflecting on who in the team had been affected by fires. And we consciously did a debriefing session with the staff, and because we knew that some of our team were affected, were spread all over Australia. And one of our team, Sarah, who lives in Bright in Victoria, was sitting in an apartment in Melbourne and with her young family, having had to evacuate her house. And she was sitting there not knowing whether her house was still standing. Another team member, Magella, had helped keep a fire at bay in the parents' home with her brother in the backyard, where the fire came right to their back fence. As each told their story, we were flipping back and forth between the data app for New South Wales and for Victoria. And miraculously, when we looked at those maps, all the fires stopped at the border. So does that problem sound familiar? Are we surprised at that problem? No, we're not. We shouldn't be, should we? But the stories also went on to talk about some of the anxiety that staff had with not knowing what was going on. Magella's mum, while she was in the backyard with the hose, her mum was working with the volunteer fire service, and she hadn't heard from her mum in 11 hours. There are others where people were uncertain about the state of where their friends were because that information was not getting through. And there's a great sense that people were not trusting the information services that were coming through because they were delayed or not helpful or broken or not interoperable. So these things don't surprise us as a community. But with the fourth industrial revolution upon us, it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. Too much of our time and effort is spent on collecting the same data over and over again. Not just our producers, but all shareholders in the food system, including, importantly, researchers. And I want to talk a bit about them. We have more data silos than we have grain silos. I just want to now just turn back to some previous experience that I've had. In my previous role in finance, as the founder of Roseto, where we were able to build a data platform that connected in real time over 300 global financial markets, and this system being used by every single major financial institution in the world. They paid for it because they derived a lot of value. So much value that the technology was recently sold for around $3 billion plus, apparently. Unfortunately, I didn't have shares or to keep any equity in that business. But just this is a system that took off, that we started in about 1999, 2000, the dawn of the internet age. Now worth over $3 billion to the global finance industry. But regulators also benefited from access to the data, and the financial system became more transparent and better regulated as a result. Critically, our universities and academics were also able to derive value at a fraction of the cost. They had access to vast amounts of real-time data, and which opened up whole new areas of research and drove innovation in the finance system. Today, around 100 Australian PhDs in finance are embedded in finance institutions all around the world, while still graduating from Australian universities. Moreover, our burgeoning fintech sector is now a world leader. Those major global impacts all started with the aim of sharing interoperable data that was analytics ready with the entire Australian research sector. It started with the research sector and had all those impacts. We can see here that there's some pointers for how it might work or how it might go in agriculture and food. In Agrifood, there are major trust barriers to sharing data among producers and other players in the agri-food system. People are right to be cautious about privacy and commercial confidence. Data can be used to control. But on the flip side, transparency can also increase trust and collaboration. If other industries can solve these problems, why can't we? If other industries can solve these problems and have solved these problems, why can't we? Together, we need to build an underlying infrastructure to collect and share data in trusted systems so that producers can unlock productivity benefits, supply chains can be more efficient, you list them all, consumers can make informed purchasing decisions, regulators can protect consumer safety, brands can unlock new markets with provenance stories, technology companies can create new products and services. But importantly, to really power up our innovation system, we need our vast, world-class research sector to access shared data to create new knowledge and accelerate innovation across these challenge areas. This is the lesson we learned from the finance industry. Collect data once, enable it to be used by many people, many times, and for multiple purposes. Maximum efficiency with minimum effort. And so back to judo. In judo, the aim is to improve oneself, physically, mentally, socially, by taking on the principles of mutual welfare and respect, and maximum efficiency with minimum effort. And by finding partners with diverse capabilities to practice with, the more diverse, the better. This means constantly testing and validating your technique. Continuous improvement driven by intense collaboration. with your partner and indeed your opponent. In the face of our dramatically changing economic and environmental political landscape, and with the mission to build a more resilient and sustainable food future, we need to do more, and we need to do much more, and with more urgency. Not to mention that we have all signed up to the $100 billion industry by 2030 that Anne mentioned. We need to accelerate the development of shared data infrastructure to mobilise our vast research talent and to power up our agri-food innovation system. You know, where a rising tide lifts all boats. We need to unlock the data. We need to develop and promote new deliberate innovation methods that privilege problems over solutions. #FlipTheResearch. Thank you.